I'm standing here in Berlin, a city that has seen empires rise and fall, walls built and torn down, and ideologies clash. And while the grand monuments and museums tell one version of that story, there's another, much smaller, much more personal history that millions of people have carried around in their pockets. I'm talking about coins. These small metal discs are more than just money. They are time capsules, reflecting the politics, art and identity of the people who made and used them. Today, we're going on a journey through 2,000 years of German history, told through its coinage. Our story starts long before Germany was a unified nation, back when Roman legions patrolled the Rhine and Danube. We'll trace the evolution from Roman denarii to the medieval Pfennig, witness the fragmentation into hundreds of state-specific currencies, and see the birth of the mighty thaler, a coin so influential its name echoes in the word dollar today. We will follow this metallic thread through the German Empire, the turmoil of the Weimar Republic, the dark years of the Third Reich, the division of the Cold War, and finally, to the modern euro that sits in my pocket right now. This isn't just a story for numismatists, the dedicated coin collectors. This is a story for anyone interested in how history is made and recorded. It is a chronological exploration of how a nation's identity is forged, stamped into metal, and passed from hand to hand, generation after generation. We'll see how these tiny objects tell a massive story of power, conflict, and unity. So let's begin our journey through Germany's coin history. Our story begins in a time and place that wasn't yet Germany. We're in Magna Germania, a vast forested region east of the Rhine and north of the Danube. The people living here, a collection of Germanic tribes, didn't have a concept of a unified nation, and they didn't mint their own coins. But that doesn't mean currency wasn't flowing. To the south and west, the colossal Roman Empire was at its peak, and its economic influence, like its legions, was hard to stop. Roman coins were the international currency of the ancient world. The most common coins trickling into these Germanic lands were the silver denarii. These were the workhorse coins of the Roman economy, roughly the size of a modern dime, and they were used for everything from paying soldiers stationed at the border forts to buying goods from local tribes. Alongside them, you'd find the larger, heavier bronze sestertii, often used for everyday transactions, and for the very wealthy or for significant state payments, the lustrous gold aureus. These coins were not just money, they were powerful propaganda tools, bearing the portraits of emperors and symbols of Roman might. For the Germanic tribes, these coins represented something new. They were a standardized, reliable store of value. While barter was still common, Roman coins were highly sought after. Archaeological finds across southern Germany have unearthed hordes of these coins, often far from the Roman frontier. This tells us they weren't just used in immediate border trade, but were traveling deep into tribal territories. They were valued for their silver and gold content, sometimes melted down to create jewelry or other high-status items. The tribes didn't just hoard them, they actively used them in trade amongst themselves and with Roman merchants. A tribe might trade amber, furs, or slaves for a pouch of denarii, which they could then use to acquire Roman wine, pottery, or weapons. It's fascinating to think that a coin minted in Rome, featuring the face of Augustus or Trajan, could end up in the hands of a Cherusci warrior hundreds of miles away, used to buy a new spear. This was the first introduction of a sophisticated monetary system to the region. However, it's crucial to remember that the Germanic peoples were users, not makers. They were on the receiving end of a powerful economic system. They might admire the craftsmanship, they definitely valued the precious metal, but the concept of a state-controlled mint issuing its own currency was a Roman one. The coins were foreign objects, symbols of a powerful, sometimes hostile neighbor. This period laid the groundwork, introducing the very idea of coinage that would, centuries later, be adopted and adapted by the successors to Rome in this very land. As the Western Roman Empire crumbled, so did its vast trade network. For a few centuries, Europe entered a period of economic simplification. Coinage became scarce, and barter returned to prominence in many areas. But the idea of money hadn't vanished. Out of the ashes of Rome, new kingdoms emerged, and with them, a new political entity that would dominate Central Europe for 1,000 years, the Holy Roman Empire. It was within this sprawling, decentralized empire that the story of German coinage truly begins. The first significant coin to emerge in this era was the Pfennig. Initially, these were thin silver coins, a direct descendant of the Roman denarius, introduced under rulers like Charlemagne in the 8th century. For hundreds of years, the pfennig was the standard. However, the Holy Roman Empire was anything but holy, Roman, or a unified empire. Power was fragmented amongst hundreds of dukes, bishops, counts, and free cities, and many of them gained the right of coinage, or Münzrecht. This led to a bewildering variety of pfennigs, all with different weights, silver content, and designs. As trade and economies grew more complex in the High Middle Ages, the small silver pfennig was no longer sufficient. A need arose for larger denomination coins. This led to the introduction of the groschen, a thicker, heavier silver coin, first minted in the 13th century. The groschen was worth multiple pfennigs and facilitated larger transactions, a sign of a burgeoning merchant class and growing cities. It was a crucial step up, allowing for more substantial trade without having to carry around giant sacks of tiny coins. Then, in the late 15th and early 16th centuries, a discovery in the mountains of Bohemia, in a town called Joachimsthal, changed everything. A massive rich silver deposit was found, and the local lords began minting a very large, high-quality silver coin. These coins came to be known as Joachimsthalers, which was soon shortened to just thalers. They were large, impressive, and contained a reliable amount of silver, making them instantly popular across Europe. They became the benchmark for international trade. And here we have one of the most fascinating linguistic legacies in all of numismatics. The thaler was so successful that its name was copied and adapted all over the world. In the Netherlands, it became the daalder, in Scandinavia, the dollar. And when the fledgling United States of America was looking for a name for its new currency, it chose to model it on the most trusted large silver coin in the world, the Spanish version of the thaler. They called it the dollar. That's right, the name of the world's most dominant currency today can be traced directly back to a 16th century silver mine in a Bohemian mountain valley. If the Middle Ages introduced the problem of too many mints, the early modern period took that problem and magnified it to an almost absurd degree. From the end of the Middle Ages right up to the unification of Germany in 1871, the area we now know as Germany was a chaotic patchwork of hundreds of independent and semi-independent states. There were kingdoms like Prussia and Bavaria, duchies, principalities, and powerful free imperial cities like Hamburg, Frankfurt, and Nuremberg, and almost all of them minted their own coins. Imagine traveling from Hamburg in the north to Munich in the south. It wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a constant change of currency. Each state had its own system, its own standards, and its own designs. While the thaler remained a common large silver standard, its subdivisions varied wildly. One state might use groschen, another might use kreuzer. The conversion rates were a nightmare for merchants and travelers alike. It was a numismatic reflection of the political fragmentation of the German-speaking lands. The coins themselves were often beautiful works of art. This was the era of detailed portraiture and elaborate coats of arms. A coin from Prussia might feature a stern-looking king, while a coin from the city of Hamburg would proudly display its castle emblem. These weren't just functional pieces of metal. They were statements of sovereignty and local pride. The silver thalers and gold ducats and guldens minted during this period are some of the most collected and admired in German history, showcasing incredible craftsmanship. The great trading cities were at the forefront of this monetary chaos. Places like Frankfurt am Main, a major center for finance and trade fairs, had to deal with this complexity daily. Money changers became essential figures in the urban economy. Their tables piled high with coins from dozens of different states. They had to be experts in metallurgy and political geography just to do their jobs. The need for a more standardized system was becoming increasingly obvious. But political realities meant that unification was still a distant dream. This period, lasting over 3.5 centuries, perfectly encapsulates the pre-Germany Germany. It was a shared cultural and linguistic space, but a politically divided one. The coins tell this story perfectly. You can lay out a dozen coins from the 18th century, all technically German, yet each one representing a different ruler, a different government, and a different local identity. This monetary disunity was a major hurdle to economic integration, and it was a problem that would only be solved by the dramatic political events of the late 19th century. After centuries of division, the political map of Germany was redrawn with startling speed. Following a series of decisive wars led by Prussia under the guidance of Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, the German states were unified into a single powerful nation, the German Empire, or in 1871, King Wilhelm I of Prussia was proclaimed German Emperor in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. And with a new nation came the need for a new, unified currency. The era of monetary chaos was over. The solution was the German mark, often called the gold mark because it was based on a gold standard. Introduced in 1873, the mark swept away the confusing mess of thalers, guldens and kreuzers. The new system was beautifully simple and decimalized. 1 mark was equal to 100 pfennig. This rationalization of the currency was a hugely important step in cementing the new nation's economic and political unity. For the first time, a coin minted in Bavaria was worth exactly the same as one minted in Berlin. The coins of the German Empire were designed to project an image of strength, unity, and imperial authority. The smaller denomination coins, from the 1 pfennig up to the 1 mark, were standardized across the empire. On one side they featured the denomination, and on the other the powerful imperial eagle, a symbol of the new central government. This eagle, with its crown and shield, was an unmistakable message. We are one nation now. However, a clever compromise was made for the larger silver and gold coins. While the reverse side still featured the imperial eagle, the obverse or head side was reserved for the portrait of the local ruler of the state in which the coin was minted. So, a 5-mark coin from Prussia would feature Kaiser Wilhelm, while one from Bavaria would show King Ludwig II. This allowed the individual states to retain a symbol of their former sovereignty, a nod to their history that was crucial for securing their loyalty to the new empire. The range of coins was comprehensive, catering to all levels of the economy. There were copper pfennigs for small purchases, nickel 5 and 10 pfennig coins, silver coins from 20 pfennigs up to the large 5-mark piece, and beautiful gold coins of 5, 10 and 20 marks. These coins were symbols of Germany's industrial and economic might in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. They were stable, trusted, and circulated widely, a metallic testament to the power of the newly unified German state, an era of confidence that would come to a shattering end in the trenches of World War I. The German Empire collapsed in defeat at the end of World War I. In its place rose a fragile democracy, the Weimar Republic. This new government was born into chaos. It was saddled with crippling war reparations dictated by the Treaty of Versailles, political extremism from both the left and right, and an economy on the brink of total collapse. The story of Weimar coinage is a dramatic tale of this economic turmoil, a descent into one of the most infamous hyperinflation events in human history. Initially, the Republic tried to continue with the old imperial-style coinage, simply replacing the eagle's crown with a more democratic-looking eagle. But the economic pressures were just too great. The government, unable to raise funds through conventional means, resorted to printing money. And printing. And printing. As the paper mark's value plummeted, the value of the metal in the coins soon became worth more than their face value. People began hoarding the old silver and even copper coins, melting them down for their metal content. This led the government to issue coins made from cheaper, less desirable metals. The age of silver and gold was gone, replaced by the age of iron, zinc, and aluminum. These were the metals of desperation. The coins felt cheap, they corroded easily, and they were a constant, tangible reminder of the nation's poverty. They were a stark contrast to the proud gold and silver marks of the empire, a physical manifestation of Germany's fall from grace. The hyperinflation reached its peak in 1923. The situation became utterly surreal. Prices doubled every few days. A loaf of bread that cost 250 marks in January cost 200 billion marks by November. Coins became completely worthless. The smallest denomination coin was for 500 marks, and even that couldn't buy anything. People were paid in wheelbarrows full of paper money. The currency had ceased to function. The trauma of this period, of seeing life savings wiped out overnight, would be seared into the German collective memory for generations. In late 1923, a new currency, the Rentenmark, was introduced to stabilize the economy. It was a drastic measure, pegging the new currency to the value of German land and industrial goods. Miraculously, it worked. The hyperinflation was stopped and a period of relative stability, the Golden Twenties began. New coins were issued for the Rentenmark and later the Reichsmark with more sober Republican designs. But the damage had been done. The coins of the Weimar Republic, especially those from the hyperinflationary period, are not just collector's items, they are artifacts of a national economic catastrophe. The economic instability of the Weimar Republic, exacerbated by the Great Depression, created fertile ground for political extremism. In 1933, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party came to power, dismantling the democracy and establishing a totalitarian dictatorship. This radical political shift was immediately reflected in the nation's currency. The coins of the Third Reich became another vehicle for the regime's hateful ideology and propaganda. The existing Reichsmark currency system was kept, but the designs were fundamentally altered. The sober Republican symbols of the Weimar era were systematically replaced. The most prominent change was the addition of the swastika, the symbol of the Nazi Party. It was incorporated into the design of the national eagle, which was restyled to look more aggressive and domineering. This new Reichsadler with swastika was stamped onto most coins, turning every single transaction into a small act of fealty to the regime. The coins themselves served as a constant, subtle reinforcement of Nazi power. The 2 and 5 Reichsmark coins, which were still made of silver in the early years of the regime, featured the eagle and swastika on one side. On the other, they bore the portrait of Paul von Hindenburg, the aging president who had appointed Hitler as chancellor. After Hindenburg's death, these were replaced with coins featuring the Garrison Church of Potsdam, a site symbolic of Prussian military tradition, which the Nazis sought to co-opt for their own narrative. As Germany rearmed and prepared for war, strategic metals like nickel and silver became increasingly valuable for the war effort. Coinage was once again debased. Production of silver coins ceased, and cheaper metals were used for all denominations. During World War II, from 1940 onwards, most coins were minted from zinc and aluminum. Just like in World War I and the Weimar crisis, the currency became dull and prone to rapid corrosion. The coins from the late war period are often found in poor condition, a metallic echo of a regime that was crumbling from the inside out. Looking at these coins today is a chilling experience. They are artifacts from one of the darkest chapters in human history. The swastika, a symbol now universally associated with genocide and tyranny, is stamped right there on an object meant for everyday use. These coins passed through the hands of millions of ordinary Germans, as well as people in the occupied territories. They are a stark reminder of how a totalitarian state permeates every aspect of daily life, right down to the small change in your pocket. They are not just pieces of metal, they are evidence. In 1945, the Third Reich lay in ruins. Germany was defeated and occupied by the 4 main Allied powers: the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union. The country was carved up into 4 occupation zones, and the city of Berlin, deep inside the Soviet zone, was similarly divided. The Reichsmark, tainted by its association with the Nazis and rendered nearly worthless by the economic collapse, was still in circulation. But honestly, it was a zombie currency. The immediate post-war years were a time of monetary limbo. In this environment, a barter economy flourished. The most reliable currency wasn't the official Reichsmark, but rather cigarettes, coffee, or nylon stockings. People used whatever they could to trade for essentials. The Allied military authorities did issue their own currency, Allied military marks, for use by their soldiers. But the fundamental problem of a worthless national currency for the German population remained. A complete monetary reform was desperately needed to get the economy back on its feet. This reform came in 1948, but, it was not a unified one. The growing ideological chasm between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union, the first chapter of the Cold War, played out in Germany's monetary policy. In June 1948, the 3 Western zones, American, British and French, unilaterally introduced a new currency, the Deutsche Mark. This move was designed to curb rampant inflation and stop the black market. It was a dramatic and largely successful measure that kick-started the West German economic recovery. The Soviet Union saw this as a hostile act. In response, they launched their own currency reform in their Eastern zone just a few days later, introducing what would eventually become the East German mark. The currency reform was the final nail in the coffin of 4-power cooperation in Germany. The Soviets also used the Western currency reform as a pretext to blockade West Berlin, cutting off all land and water access to the city's western sectors. This led to the famous Berlin airlift, where the Western Allies supplied the city by air for nearly a year. This period from 1945 to 1949 was a transitional phase. The first coins issued by the Allied military government were simple, bearing only the denomination and the words Bank Deutscher Länder, the Bank of the German States. They were deliberately plain, devoid of any national or political symbols. They were coins for a country that wasn't yet sure what it was going to be. But the dual currency reforms of 1948 set the stage. The monetary division of Germany preceded its political division. Two currencies, two economies, and soon, two separate German states would emerge from the rubble. In 1949, the three Western occupation zones officially became the Federal Republic of Germany, or West Germany. With the new Deutsche Mark already in circulation, the country embarked on an astonishing period of growth known as the economic miracle. The Deutsche Mark quickly became one of the most stable and respected currencies in the world, a powerful symbol of West Germany's post-war recovery and its identity as a prosperous democratic nation. The coins of the West German Deutsche Mark were a masterclass in simple, elegant, and modern design. They deliberately avoided controversial or overly nationalistic imagery. The designs were clean, clear, and functional, reflecting the new Germany's focus on economic stability and democratic values rather than military glory or imperial ambition. These were coins that projected confidence through understatement. The smaller denomination coins, the 1, 2, 5, and 10 Pfennig pieces, were made of copper-plated steel or brass-plated steel. The 1 and 2 Pfennig coins featured a simple oak leaf, a traditional German symbol often associated with strength and endurance, but in a much softer, more naturalistic way than in the past. The 5 and 10 Pfennig coins also featured an oak sprig. These designs remained virtually unchanged for over 50 years, becoming an incredibly familiar part of daily life for generations of West Germans. The higher denomination coins were equally iconic. The 50 Pfennig coin depicted a woman planting an oak seedling, a powerful and hopeful symbol of post-war reconstruction and new beginnings. The 1, 2, and 5 Mark coins were perhaps the most famous. The 1 and 2 Mark coins featured a stylized German eagle, but it was a very different bird from its imperial or Nazi predecessors. This eagle was sleek, modern, and unadorned with crowns or weapons, a symbol of a sovereign, peaceful state. The 5 Mark coin, a large and satisfyingly hefty piece, simply had the denomination 5 surrounded by the words Bundesrepublik Deutschland and Deutsche Mark. The Deutsche Mark was more than just money. For West Germans, it was a source of immense pride and a tangible link to their country's success. It was the currency of the Volkswagen Beetle, of rebuilding, of rejoining the international community. The stability of the DM was seen as a cornerstone of the nation's identity, a direct contrast to the traumatic instability of the Weimar and Nazi periods. When Germans traveled abroad, the strength of their mark was a constant reminder of how far their country had come. While West Germany was experiencing its economic miracle, the Soviet occupation zone became the German Democratic Republic, or East Germany, in 1949. It was a communist state, a satellite of the Soviet Union, and its currency, the East German mark, told a very different story from its Western counterpart. If the West German DM was a symbol of free market capitalism and democracy, the East German mark was the coin of a centrally planned socialist state. The coins of the GDR were explicitly political and ideological in their design. They were tools of the state, designed to promote the values of the socialist system. The most prominent symbol, featured on most denominations, was the state emblem of East Germany. This consisted of a hammer, representing the industrial workers, and a compass, representing the intelligentsia, academics, engineers, and so on, surrounded by a wreath of rye, representing the farmers. It was a classic piece of socialist heraldry, symbolizing the unity of the different classes of workers. The coins were minted primarily from aluminum, making them extremely lightweight, and honestly, they felt cheap compared to the heavier West German coins. This was partly due to economic necessity, as the East German economy struggled to keep up with the West, but it also became a defining characteristic. The lightweight aluminum coins, from the 1 Pfennig up to the 2 Mark piece, felt insubstantial, a physical metaphor for the often hollow promises of the state-controlled economy. Unlike West Germany, which stuck to a very limited set of standard designs, The GDR issued a vast number of commemorative coins. This was a common practice in socialist countries. These coins celebrated historical anniversaries of the communist movement, famous German socialists like Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, the achievements of the National People's Army, and the construction of socialist landmarks like the Berlin TV Tower. These coins were another form of propaganda, intended to build a distinct East German identity rooted in socialist tradition. The East German mark was a non-convertible currency. It was illegal to take it out of the country, and its official exchange rate with the West German Deutsche Mark was a fiction maintained by the state. On the black market, the DM was worth many times more. For East Germans, the weakness of their currency was a constant reminder of their confinement behind the Iron Curtain and the economic disparity with the West. The coins, with their proud socialist symbols, represented a system that promised equality, but often delivered scarcity and repression. The late 1980s, saw a seismic shift in the geopolitical landscape. The Soviet Union's power began to wane, and reform movements swept across Eastern Europe. Then in November 1989, in a series of events that honestly stunned the world, the Berlin Wall fell. The physical barrier that had divided the city and symbolized the Cold War was breached. This set in motion a rapid and, exhilarating process that would lead to the end of the German Democratic Republic and the reunification of Germany. One of the most complex and crucial aspects of this process was monetary union. The two Germanys had two separate currencies, two separate economies, and just vastly different levels of productivity. A decision had to be made, how to merge the powerful West German Deutsche Mark with the weak East German Mark. This was not just an economic question, it was deeply emotional and political. For East Germans, adopting the Deutsche Mark was a primary goal, a symbol of freedom and access to the prosperity they had seen for so long on West German television. On July 1, 1990, several months before the formal political reunification, an economic, monetary and social union was formed. The Deutsche Mark became the sole official currency for both East and West Germany. The conversion was a massive logistical undertaking. Banks across East Germany were stocked with new Deutsche Mark banknotes and coins. On that day, long lines formed as East Germans eagerly exchanged their old lightweight marks for the solid, stable currency of the West. The exchange rate was a point of major debate. To give the East Germans a fair start, and as a political gesture of unity, a generous one-to-one conversion rate was offered for a certain amount of savings, wages and pensions. While economically questionable, the true market value of the East German mark was far lower. It was seen as a necessary step to ensure social cohesion and make reunification palatable. The old East German coins and notes were quickly withdrawn and demonetized, becoming obsolete overnight. The formal reunification of Germany took place on October 3, 1990. The 5 re-established eastern states joined the Federal Republic of Germany. For the first time since 1945, there was a single unified German state with a single unified currency. The familiar coins of West Germany, the oak leaves, the woman planting the seedling, the modern eagle, were now the coins of all of Germany. The Deutsche Mark, once the symbol of the West German economic miracle, now became the symbol of a newly whole and reunited nation, facing the immense challenge of integrating two vastly different societies. The Deutsche Mark had been a symbol of German stability and identity for over half a century. Giving it up was not an easy decision. It was for many Germans the most successful institution in their post-war history. However, Germany was also a driving force behind a new ambitious project: deeper European integration. This project culminated in the creation of a single European currency, the euro, designed to unite the continent's economies and foster peace and cooperation. The transition was carefully planned. On January 1, 1999, the euro was introduced as an electronic currency for banking and financial transactions. The exchange rate was irrevocably fixed. 1 euro was equal to 1.95583 Deutsche Marks. For 3 years, prices were displayed in both euros and marks, allowing people to get used to the new values. Then, on January 1, 2002, euro banknotes and coins were physically introduced, and the Deutsche Mark began to be withdrawn. It was the end of an era. The design of the euro coins is a fascinating compromise between European unity and national identity. Every euro coin has a common European side, designed by the Belgian artist Luc Lykes, which shows a map of Europe. This side is the same for all countries in the Eurozone. However, each country gets to design its own national side for the coins it mints. This means that the euro coin from Spain has a different design from one from France or one from Germany. But they are all legal tender everywhere in the Eurozone. Germany chose 3 different designs for its national sides. The 1, 2 and 5 cent coins feature an oak sprig, a direct and deliberate callback to the beloved design of the old Pfennig coins, providing a sense of continuity. The 10, 20 and 50 cent coins depict the Brandenburg Gate, arguably Germany's most famous landmark and a powerful symbol of its reunification and its place at the heart of Europe. For the 2 most valuable coins, the 1 and 2 euro pieces, Germany chose to use its national symbol, the eagle. But again, it's the modern, sleek and peaceful eagle of the Federal Republic, the same one that appeared on the old Deutsche Mark coins. This choice was highly symbolic, carrying the emblem of post-war democratic Germany into the new European currency. So, while the name on the currency changed, the symbols on the German coins tell a story of continuity, reunification, and a commitment to a unified Europe. Beyond the standard circulation coins used for everyday transactions, Germany, like many countries, has a rich tradition of issuing special commemorative coins. These coins are designed to celebrate, honor, and remember significant aspects of the nation's culture, history, and scientific achievements. They are miniature works of art, often minted in precious metals like silver and gold for collectors, but also, in the case of the euro, as special coins that can actually end up in your change. Before the euro, both West and East Germany issued commemorative coins. The GDR, as we saw, used them extensively for political purposes. West Germany also issued them, typically in 5 and 10 mark denominations, celebrating German scientists like Max Planck, composers like Bach, and philosophers like Kant. These coins highlighted Germany's contribution to the world in fields beyond politics and economics, focusing on its rich cultural and intellectual heritage. They were a way of building a national identity based on the land of poets and thinkers. With the introduction of the euro, this tradition has continued and expanded. Germany regularly issues silver collector coins, now with face values like 10 or 20 euros, celebrating everything from the Brothers Grimm to the anniversary of the Bauhaus Design School. These are typically sold at a premium and are not intended for circulation, but they serve as beautiful metallic records of what the nation deems worthy of celebration. They form a cultural calendar, stamped in silver. The most visible and widely collected commemorative coins today are the special 2 euro coins. Since 2004, every country in the Eurozone has been allowed to issue a certain number of circulating 2 euro coins with a special commemorative design on the national side. This has created a massive wave of interest among casual collectors across the continent. People check their change, hoping to find a 2 euro coin from another country or a special edition from their own. Germany has taken full advantage of this. It issues at least one special 2 euro coin every year. A popular series, for example, features one of Germany's 16 federal states each year, showcasing a famous landmark from that state, like Cologne Cathedral or the Neuschwanstein Castle. Other coins have commemorated the 50th anniversary of the Treaty of Rome or the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. These coins are a fantastic way to engage the public with history and geography, turning a simple transaction into a potential discovery. They are the latest chapter in Germany's long and fascinating story told through its coinage. So there we have it. From the Roman denarii that first introduced the concept of money to this region, through the fragmented coinage of the Middle Ages, the unifying mark of the German Empire, the debased metals of crisis and war, the ideological divide of the Cold War, and finally to the euro, we have seen how Germany's history is stamped into its coins. Each piece of metal tells a story of the era that produced it, its politics, its values, its aspirations, and its hardships. They are a tangible connection to the past, a history you can hold in the palm of your hand. These coins show us that currency is never just currency. It is a projection of power and a statement of identity. The shift from hundreds of local coins to a single imperial mark was as much about nation building as it was about economics. The stark difference between the West German Deutsche Mark and the East German Mark was a daily physical reminder of the ideological chasm that split the world. And the adoption of the euro was a conscious choice to embed Germany's identity within a larger European project. The story of these coins is the story of Germany itself. This journey is, of course, far from exhaustive, but I hope it has given you a new appreciation for these small objects we so often take for granted. They are a fascinating lens through which to view the grand sweep of history. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which era of German coinage do you find the most interesting? Do you have a favorite design, or perhaps a coin with a personal story attached to it? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching.